This program contains graphic images and content some may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
We live in Baltimore City amongst greatness. There's so much talent, it's like a gold mine covered with crime. Our kids dream big and they have a lot of skills, but they are being neglected. It's a vicious cycle breeding, and instead of Baltimore growing, it's like our city is constantly bleeding.
Baltimore. It's fighting to find its soul as it loses souls to a cycle of crime and violence. By virtue of being born in one of America's most dangerous cities, some are doomed before they have a chance to live. Amani Grossman is one of those stories. Amani Grossman is Latresa Scaff's son. Latresa raised a family along Bonaparte Avenue in East Baltimore. It may not have been sweet, but it was home.
They've seen people get beat up real bad. You know, like I said, bodies. They hear gunshots. They couldn't go outside and play.
No place for a child to grow up.
Amani was a great kid. He was an awesome kid. He was like the life of the family gatherings. Make everybody laugh.
But that brightness began to fade as a teen.
He would talk about the violence every day. You know, like things like, Ma, if you don't get us out this city, I'ma die. I know I'ma die.
Despite those fears, Amani remained resilient. That's Amani making a game-winning shot in a middle school game.
That ended up being one of those games where everyone rushes off the court and everyone's cheering and all that stuff. So that's probably the first memory that I have, or when I think of Amani, that's probably the first memory that I have.
Pablo Korapecki coached Amani in middle school.
He was the kind of player, you know, coaches dream about.
Away from school, though, Amani faced threats and unshakable street violence. At 13, his life was threatened at knife point, and he never shook what he witnessed while shooting dice one day along his block. Amani described to doctors how, quote, a guy came up and blew another guy's brains out. Doctors would later diagnose Amani with PTSD. Amani's evaluation followed one of his 3 arrests by the age of 17. The cases involved an armed robbery, a carjacking, and a sex offense. Prosecutors dropped the charges in all but one case. Amani pleaded guilty to the sex offense. A judge sentenced him to 10 years but suspended 9 of them. One of his childhood friends was a co-defendant in that case.
That's what kept drawing him back into the city, his childhood friends.
So Latresa sent Amani to Virginia to earn his high school diploma.
While he was away in school, he lost maybe like 3 of his close friends to gun violence. So that's when I got nervous about him coming back to Baltimore.
Latresa moved out of the city and into the county in the hopes of providing a safer life for her family.
He didn't like it out here. He said it was nothing to do. He was bored.
By 2016, Amani was back in Baltimore with the same childhood friend charged in that sex offense case. This video shows them together on September 14th. Seconds later, shots rang out. Amani's childhood friend stood by and watched as he was murdered.
I felt it. It was horrible. This is the most pain I ever endured in life.
It made you look in the mirror a little bit and figure out, like, where are we kind of failing on?
Amani's bedroom is just as he left it that day.
I just hug the pillow sometimes because I can still smell him.
Except for the jersey with his number on it.
He loved basketball.
A gift from the team.
He's at the end, number 2. I was picturing him going out of state to college, playing professional basketball.
The same picture now hangs in the gym at Amani's middle school behind the team's bench.
He's very much alive. In different places I've written down his name and things like that. So, you know, whenever I'm having a bad day, you might open the book in your notebook and you kind of see him, see his name there, and you kind of remember that there's a reason why we're here and there's a reason why we're doing what we're doing.
Amani was murdered 216 in the year 2016. Outside of family and close friends, he's been reduced to a number. More than 300 people each year faced violent death since 2015.
We count more homicides than high school graduates, and that's a statistic. A school system that doesn't care if your kids pass or fail, lack of knowledge, no education, means our kids can end up in jail.
I don't want him to end up like his brothers who are statistics to Baltimore.
Patrice Lovett is a mother of 6. She has 2 sons in jail and is desperately trying to keep her teenage son on the right track.
I started having problems with him staying out late, coming in and out, and I was like, you know, because there's no school.
The school shutdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic caused more than just an academic decline in some kids.
I'm trying to tell my son, you don't want to go that road, you know. It's not the road you want to go.
But the pathway to prison may have already been paved. Patrice's 17-year-old son was arrested over the Christmas holiday, charged as an adult with armed robbery and assault. After spending several days in jail, he's now home on detention with an ankle monitor. Before the pandemic hit, her son was a senior, earning good grades, on track to graduate. Now, his future is not as bright. City Schools' graduation rate is at a 6-year low. Experts say students that don't have an education that prepares them for employment often turn to the streets.
If the school system cannot find students who are supposed to be in the school during the day, then the criminal justice system is probably going to be somehow linked to finding those students either before they commit a crime or immediately afterwards.
They look to the streets because they feel like they have no other way to go.
Some of the students who are not being educated now will be some of the students who will be attending funerals for later on.
You don't have to tell that to this Baltimore mother. She knows what happens when the education system fails.
I have 3 deceased baby fathers, all of them gone.
She's hoping to break the cycle, that her children will make it out of the grips of the city with their lives.
I don't want to bury my children in the streets of Baltimore. I don't want them killed in the streets of Baltimore.
Being born in Baltimore, it's like being raised in a city with no hope. You can be robbed of your dreams as a kid just walking out your front door. These kids have gifts that are snatched away before they have the opportunity to manifest it. Growing up in Baltimore, a lot of kids don't make it.
Mackenzie Elliott, 3 years old, killed by a stray bullet. 16-year-old Alajuane Davis was shot while riding in a car. 73-year-old Tony Price was shot and killed by a stranger as he sat at a traffic light. From toddlers to teens, college students and parents, even the elderly are not immune to violence.
Taken from this world before they could even follow their dreams. Violence has become the new disease of Baltimore.
Heart-wrenching screams from a family as police remove the body of a 27-year-old man ambushed and killed inside his grandmother's home. Those same blood-curdling screams heard on that same block just 1 week earlier when 18-year-old Taylor Davis was caught in the crossfire while walking to the store. The teenager, who had dreams of pursuing a career in medicine, died outside of her home.
Justice! Justice! Justice!
The cries for Taylor Davis happened just 9 months after the city rallied around the family of 7-year-old Taylor Hayes, who died after being shot inside a car in southwest Baltimore.
Enough is enough. And the reason why I say that is because we're losing too many of our kids out here.
Everybody say they praying for us. Everybody say they here for Taylor. Everybody want something to be done. Step up and tell what happened to Taylor.
Law enforcement and community leaders ask for the public's help in many cases, oftentimes offering rewards.
It's time for us to stop with the stop snitching mentality and to come together collectively to say enough is enough.
In Baltimore, in 2019, 3 out of every 10 cases dropped by the state's attorney's office were the result of a witness or a victim who was unwilling to cooperate. But even the death of a 3-year-old child in Baltimore is not enough to end the code of silence.
We should be embarrassed to live in a city where the killer of Mackenzie Elliott is walking around enjoying this sunshine, where we will hear her voice and hear her laugh Never again.
1-year-old Carter Scott was killed in a Cherry Hill parking lot when gunmen opened fire on his father's car.
Having a child killed is one of the worst things that can happen to a neighborhood or a community.
Put the guns down because it's innocent people that's getting hurt.
We're dealing with the same people over and over again. Some days you're a victim, some days you're a suspect.
Petty disputes turn deadly, robberies become murders, neighborhood fights become bloodbaths.
Babies, young kids, teenagers, young adults, all having their life taken. They can be caught in a crossfire or at the wrong place at the wrong time, but you never know. They could be set up by their own kind. Our children face gangs, police brutality, drugs and guns all over the city.
So how does a once thriving city get to the point where human life has no value? It's a very simple question, but like so many in life, there are no simple answers. Many point to the riots after the death of Freddie Gray.
I've been recording.
Freddie Gray was known to law enforcement after drug arrests dating back to 2007. The 25-year-old African-American died in police custody, sparking outrage.
We need you guys to back up, sir.
However, the riots are not an answer, more likely a symptom of a deep-seated mistrust in a community.
It's for your safety, not our safety, your safety.
Corruption runs deep in Baltimore. It's the years of corruption in the police department that fueled mistrust with the community. The notorious Flex Squad was disbanded in 2006 after accusations of rape, drug possession, and illegal gambling. Several years later, there was another undercover unit fighting criminal charges of their own.
Hey, Sarge. Hey, come downstairs right quick. They're about to get it open.
The city's elite gun trace task force was once held up as a model of a way to get guns off the streets. In reality, they were a group of criminals with badges who spent a good part of their careers framing people for crimes they didn't commit. Then they stole from many of them. Minutes before shooting this video, the officers had already cracked the safe and stolen at least $100,000 out of it. Kilos of cocaine that disappeared ended up with a local bail bondsman who sold it for the sergeant of the unit.
Are you going to continue to lie to me?
Albert Brown is one of the victims of the task force.
Money that was taken and his rights were severely impinged upon. So it was an egregious case.
Officers arrested Brown on drug and handgun charges. The officers drove him a few blocks away and burglarized his home. Brown is one of nearly 24 suing the city for millions of dollars. So far, the city has paid more than $10 million in lawsuits related to the rogue unit. But corrupt cops did not start or stop with this unit. In 2017, a year after the task force case ended in convictions, new evidence of new misdeeds behind the badge.
Okay, check here.
This Baltimore City police officer was caught on his own body-worn camera in an alley, appearing to place drugs in a can. He then appears to toss it down and bury it under debris.
Can you reach in there?
Officer Richard Pinheiro is not alone. Pinheiro's body-worn camera records two other officers just feet away, standing by, watching.
Yep.
In that moment, it appears all three officers have forgotten how their cameras function and the fact that their body-worn cameras roll back 30 seconds when activated. That means whatever the officer was doing 30 seconds before hitting the record button
check here.
is also recorded. In this case, it's Pinheiro placing suspected drugs in a can, leaving the alley to activate his camera, and returning to the spot where he was just standing seconds earlier.
He retrieves it right from the space where he had just put it.
Debbie Katz-Levy is with the Public Defender's Office.
Our initial reaction was complete shock.
A year later, Pinheiro was brought up on criminal charges. He was later convicted of misconduct and fabricating evidence. In Officer Pinheiro's case, the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office says it dropped more than 114 cases because of credibility issues stemming from the allegations of his misconduct. Cases that put suspected criminals back on the street.
The police took oath to protect and serve, but yet they're not to be trusted. Instead of helping the communities, they're bringing about more destruction. From planting drugs to illegal arrests, they're doing more than committing a crime. The lives they've ruined of so many innocent people, that's one thing you can't get back is time.
In a city where drugs, guns, and violence go hand in hand, it's not just corrupt police putting drug dealers back on the streets. Aggressive politics from a crusading state attorney are tying the hands of the officers trying to keep the peace. If you don't believe that's true, take a look at this Baltimore police officer body camera video. A broken brake light, a routine traffic stop, and a routine all too familiar to an officer.
How much weed do you have, man? Is this it? All right, dude. What is this, like an ounce?
An ounce is roughly 28 grams, which is double what Maryland law allows most people to carry without being charged criminally. Baltimore City State's Attorney, Marilyn Mosby.
There is no public safety value in prosecuting marijuana possession. Furthermore, there is no link between marijuana possession and violent crime.
In 2019, the state attorney announced plans to stop prosecuting cases involving simple possession of marijuana.
Just put your hands on top of you.
In this case of this traffic stop, even at twice the amount that someone can possess for personal use, prosecutors could have chosen not to prosecute.
Good.
But as this traffic stop progressed, the officer found even more marijuana in the car. Several pounds in the car.
Oh my God! It never ends. Never ends, man. Got more? This guy said, "Yeah, I got a little bit of weed."
In the trunk, mason jars and plastic bags.
Oh, Jesus.
The officer writes in his report, the large amount of suspected marijuana, the way it was packaged and concealed, leads me to believe through my training, knowledge, and experience that the driver was in fact utilizing the illegal CDS, which means controlled dangerous substances, for the purpose of street-level distribution.
We will be prosecuting possession with intent to distribute. What that means is is there baggies that would indicate that there's some sort of distribution? Are there scales that would indicate that there would the intent to distribute these narcotics? Those are just a couple of examples.
The officer notes the suspected marijuana is broken down into different gram increments and in different types of packaging, similar to what City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby said her office would use to determine whether to file drug charges. But we searched the state's electronic court records and found the case didn't exist. We've since been told the City State's Attorney's Office dropped the charges. The City State's Attorney's Office would not do an on-camera interview. A spokesperson told us by email in 2019, after a thorough review of the facts, our prosecutors determined that this case did not extend beyond mere possession and consistent with our office policy not to prosecute mere possession of marijuana, we elected to release the defendant without charges.
Never ends, man.
The state's attorney's office did not address how they came to the conclusion not to prosecute.
Like 3 pounds of weed, dude.
Despite officers finding what they believe to be several pounds of marijuana, a large amount of money, and baggies that could be used to deal.
So basically what she's doing is giving a sanction that it's okay. Keep doing what you're doing.
Mike Gimbel is considered an expert in the field of drug rehabilitation.
Everyone knows that drugs are the leading cause of crime and violence, not only in Baltimore, but in every city and county in this country.
We reached out to the Baltimore Police Department back in 2019. They too sent a statement. It says in part, under Commissioner Harrison, in an effort to increase the number of convictions that result from drug arrest, we are now taking a closer look at the cases that prosecutors decided not to pursue to see what, if anything, we could have done differently that might have resulted in a better outcome.
End of arrest.
The system fails you once again. You never seem to really win. Nobody trying to risk their life to be a witness. Baltimore lives by the code. Everybody mind their business.
What role does the justice system's revolving door play in a catch and release philosophy, putting criminals back on the streets to perfect their craft? The story of David Warren, first accused of attempted murder when barely a teenager, proof of another casualty of being born in Baltimore. It's here, among the coral reef, a father and son forged a friendship.
That's me diving
For Scott McKemmy,
on a coral reef in Cozumel, Mexico.
it's this sort of moment a parent holds on to.
We were very close. We did a lot.
When their child
He was funny. He was loud. He would give a stranger the shirt off his back.
is not around.
And when he died, part of me died with him.
Brian McKemmy was working on a job site in Baltimore City.
My son was on the back porch putting aluminum trim around a sliding glass door. These two guys start shooting at the house. The owner of the house is in the house shooting back. My son's hit 3 times and died right on that porch.
9 days after Brian's murder, Baltimore police posted this picture on Facebook of a bag, bullets, and a Glock. The caption read, 26-year-old man arrested with loaded handgun.
There's something very wrong here.
It was the handgun that killed Brian.
I want to hear him say, you know what, we charged somebody. We locked somebody up and charged him with the murder of your son.
But that hasn't happened.
Brian was number 180 of 2018. I'll never forget that number.
There's a lot about his son's case Scott won't forget, like the man they arrested with the murder weapon, David Warren. 9 days after Brian's murder, police pulled Warren over. In front of the passenger seat was a blue bag. Inside it was the gun that killed Brian. Police arrested Warren, but not for murder. He was charged with being a felon in possession of a firearm, but his fingerprints were not on the gun.
I pull up, I hop out, I put this bitch to test. I'm going for headshots.
David Warren has quite the reputation
If I want you dead, they might as well race you off the map.
as a repeat violent offender.
I beat 10 charges, yeah, I'm a vet.
It's a reputation Warren raps about in the lyrics of his music videos posted online.
I find this shit so funny. Blow his brains out, have him stretched out like a dummy.
David Warren was charged with attempted murder when he was 14 years old. He's been charged with the crime 4 more times since, and that's just attempted murder charges. His rap sheet is 92 pages.
If they'd have put him away back then, maybe he wouldn't have been on the street that day.
David Warren is someone to me who's an absolute predator.
During Kevin Davis's time as Baltimore's police commissioner, he held a news conference calling David Warren a hitman for hire.
David Warren is a member of the 10 Grand Club in Baltimore. It's a club of people who consider themselves hitmen for hire.
Warren was wanted for shooting 5 people at a Memorial Day cookout.
David Warren was already notorious by the time that I had heard about him. And I had heard about David Warren from frustrated homicide detectives.
Detectives watched city prosecutors drop case after case against Warren.
The city failed.
We reviewed recordings from Warren's court proceedings and found in at least 3 attempted murder cases, prosecutors dropped charges because witnesses failed to appear in court.
It's no wonder that people are afraid and intimidated about coming forward. That's just a human reaction to a dysfunctional criminal justice system.
Out of Warren's 15 criminal cases in Baltimore City, prosecutors dropped charges in 11 of them. The last one was for illegal possession of the handgun that killed Brian. The Glock officers found on the car floor.
So what type of message do you think this sends to the criminal?
If you want to kill somebody, do it in Baltimore City and you'll probably get away with it.
The history of dropping charges spans 3 states' attorneys. Marilyn Mosby dropped at least 5 cases against Warren. Previous city states' attorneys dropped at least 4 each. Changes in laws on record keep making it difficult to know how many more charges against Warren were dropped. David Warren is in prison now, serving a 15-year sentence. But it's not for any crime he was accused of in Baltimore City.
This call will be recorded and monitored.
Well, this jailhouse phone caught another shooting.
My daughter just accused me, that's why. Hello?
County prosecutors got their man.
Our kids deserve justice. They're more than just a number. Don't get blinded by what they want you to see. While they're playing with our children's lives, our children's blood paint the city.
That brings us back to the city that is dying. So many symptoms, progressive policies releasing criminals, police citizens don't trust. This list keeps growing. If you still don't believe Baltimore is a city in crisis, consider this.
This has got to stop being our meeting place.
This is one of the few spots where families don't want to meet.
Oh, baby.
Remember Amani, the 216th murder of 2016?
Kingdom come, thy will be done.
His family has gathered to remember him, but the family will visit one more gravesite this day. Loss in this family has been passed down from generation to generation.
Oh, my baby.
Amani's uncle was killed in Baltimore in 2003. His grandfather murdered in 1981.
I don't even know what to do at this point in time. It's too much. Something has to be done with these murders.
3 generations lost to extreme violence in Baltimore. Now there's a 4th generation, Amani's son, a child hopefully not sentenced to the same fate of those who came before him.
I know a woman who lost her son. I know her personally. I am her, and she is me, and my story is deep. My son was 22 years old when he was murdered in these streets. His life was taken just like that. Only thing left was memories. A high school graduate, a brother, he was my son, the first one. And when they took his life, my whole body went numb. To see your child lifeless, laying there like they sleep. But now when you say their name, you say rest in peace. My son was an artist. He used his gift with music to share messages to the world. He had a positive impact on a lot of people, and what happened to him he didn't deserve. I had to change my mindset of how violence is viewed and turn my pain into purpose. I realized it was layers to my pain, and I am bruised but not broken. Tion Jones didn't get a chance to become destined to what he was supposed to be, but he will forever and always will live through me.